cannot be above the claim of maintenance under a secular law like Section 125 of the CRPC. Just like in 1985, almost 40 years ago, after the famous Shah Bano judgment, again a Supreme Court ruling, this time too, once again, the orthodox self-appointed board of Muslim men. Remember, there are no women in the All India Muslim Personal Law Board. It's a board of Muslim men which has decided to oppose this Supreme Court order too, much like they did in 1985 after Shah Bano. Now, this once again brings into the spotlight the contradiction between personal laws on the one hand and your selective use of personal laws versus secular laws which should apply to all Indians. In this particular instance, the Supreme Court was saying that Muslim women have as much right to alimony as Hindu women or Christian women or Sikh women under a secular law like Section 125 of the CRPC. So here is the contradiction and here is the double standard really. On the one hand, there are personal laws which are held sometimes even above fundamental rights in the Constitution, but at the same time, those very same people who say that personal laws are sacrosanct and personal laws need to be protected are also batting for secularism. So when the Supreme Court upholds the rights of Muslim women, how is that not secular? When the Supreme Court says Muslim women have as much right to alimony as women of any other religion, then how is that not secular? Doesn't this show the duplicity of all those who hail on the one hand secularism but oppose it when it comes to personal laws? Are personal laws above secularism and the Constitution of this country?
कोई आदमी शादी के बाद तलाक के बाद भी अगर उसे ज़िंदगी भर मेंटेनेंस देना है तो वो तलाक क्यों देगा? मुस्लिम पर्सनल लॉ बोर्ड की वर्किंग कमेटी ने प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ बोर्ड को ये अथॉरिटी दी है कि वो लीगल कमेटी से कंसल्ट करके इस कानून को इस फैसले को कैसे रोल बैक किया जा सकता है, इस पर काम करें।
जो मुस्लिम पर्सनल लॉ बोर्ड है उसको खुद में रिफॉर्म करने की ज़रूरत है।
कुछ लोगों की आदत है कि वो हर सुधार पर, हर संवैधानिक सुधार पर सांप्रदायिक वार करने की कोशिश करते हैं और उसकी कोशिश के पीछे उनकी मकसद और मंशा होती है कि कौम की तरक्की पर, तालीम पर तालिबानी ताला जड़े।
हिंदुस्तान की कोई भी बॉडी या कोई भी इंडिविजुअल हो, उसे संविधान सम्मत तरीके से सुप्रीम कोर्ट में या कोर्ट में जाने का हक है।
ये माननीय न्यायालय इस सारी चीज़ों को देखेगा, इसके बाद जो है माननीय न्यायालय हम समझते हैं कि उनके मांग पर विचार करेगा।
So let's take a look at this divergent stand that's been taken by the All India Muslim Personal Law Board as opposed to what the court ruled just last week. This is what it plays out legally. Now, the SC order last week said that the law for maintenance for a divorced Muslim woman applies as much to her as it does to a woman of any other faith, that it applies to women of all faiths. The Muslim Personal Law Board's objection is that this ruling is contrary to Islamic law, which is Sharia, as well as Islamic principles. The Supreme Court's order said that alimony cannot be seen as charity. It's not charity from the husband to his ex-wife, but it's part of the fundamental rights of a married woman. The Muslim Personal Law Board's objection is husbands supporting ex-wives is contradictory to the nature of divorce. The court order also went on to say that this right, which Muslim women have as much as women of any other religion, this right reinforces gender equality and financial security for all women. On the other hand, the Muslim Personal Law Board objects that Waqf boards can take care of struggling divorced women as per Muslim law. It's not the ex-husband. The court order says that Indian men must recognize the role and sacrifices of housewives or homemakers and therefore must provide them with maintenance in the event of a divorce. The AIMPLB's objection is that why should men bear the burden in the name of women's rights? So this is the contradiction that's been laid out. So pretty much very little has changed as far as this orthodox, self-appointed group of Muslim men called the All India Muslim Personal Law Board. Almost 40 years ago, they opposed the Shah Banu verdict, which was a landmark verdict by the Supreme Court of India. And today again, they're opposed to a two-judge bench decision last week by the Supreme Court about providing maintenance under Section 125 of the CRPC to Muslim women as much as it applies to women of any other religion. Shazia Ilmi, National Spokesperson of the BJP, is joining us. Tasleem Ahmed Rahmani is President of the Muslim Political Council of India. Zakia Soman is an author and activist, and she was also at the forefront of banning instant triple talaq. Yasmeen Farooqi is National General Secretary of the STPI. Zakia Soman, let me start with you first. I don't want you to draw parallels between this particular case and what happened in the triple talaq fight. But once again, what we are seeing is that the Muslim Personal Law Board is opposing what seems like a common sense decision by the Supreme Court of India that any woman who is divorced and is entitled to alimony by her ex-husband, that can be claimed under Section 125 of the CRPC by Muslim women as much as it can be claimed by Hindu women or Christian women or Sikh women. Why should anybody have a problem with that? Why should anyone oppose that?
Thanks for having me, Zeka. The Muslim Personal Law Board was wrong way back in 85, 86, and it is even more wrong today. I don't think they are connected with the ground realities. They're talking out of their head when they say that the Waqf Board will provide maintenance to women. I would like to ask them, can they share a list of the number of women with whom the Waqf Board has so far, looked at or cooperated with or provided any kind of help to. So they are talking out of their head. I think their problem is that they are rooted still in, 2024 India. They are still rooted in a medieval mindset, in an archaic and patriarchal way of looking at the world. And I think there is a deep problem with the way they look at women's rights, particularly Muslim women's rights. And I would even go to the extent of saying that I do not agree with their understanding and interpretation of Sharia and of the Islamic jurisdiction.
Okay, so Shazi Almi, let's look at the objections put forth by the Muslim Personal Law Board. The Muslim Personal Law Board says that husbands supporting ex-wives by providing them maintenance under 125 of CRPC contradicts the nature of divorce. They are also saying that if a divorced woman were to face hardship, then the Waqf Board can take care of them as opposed to the ex-husband. Also, they are saying, why should a man bear the burden in the name of women's rights and gender equality? Their objection is also that such a concept of maintenance does not exist under Islamic law once a divorce is sought and once a divorce is granted. Are any of this valid in 2024 India?
Well, not at all, and I think All India Muslim Personal Law Board should rename itself and call themselves All India Anti-Muslim Personal Law Board, because that's all they've done, that's their sole contribution. Even when it comes to matters of Quran, they are a political body, they have nothing to do with religion, because their understanding of Quran is so skewed. They actually were all right with triple talaq, which is actually banned and is not part of the Quran. So these are people who call themselves leaders of the Muslim community, but actually work as a political body, so to speak. And I don't know why should they should be up in arms and have so much outrage at the idea of a woman who's divorced by her husband and who has no means of support. And after all, an ex-husband must support his ex-wife and children, especially if she has no means or financial means to look after herself. So, and also the bigger questions that arise out of this are, is a Muslim woman not an Indian citizen?
Yeah.
The laws that provide for security of all women in the country, should those not be applicable to Muslim women also? What has she done to deserve this treatment or discrimination? And when Muslims all over India are absolutely all right with accepting this, the IPC and CRPC in all matters, why should they insist on Sharia when it comes to personal laws which actually impact the rights of women? Because they deal with matters of marriage, divorce, succession, adoption and inheritance. So clearly, you know, Islam gets endangered when it comes to women's rights. And how fair is that?
No, I
If they
think you
really
have a valid
problem
point,
with law
absolute
per
valid
se,
point, Shazia. Because, you know, this double standard, this convenience when it comes to personal laws, Sharia should be applied, but all other laws, IPC and CRPC, should be applied. Tasneem Ahmed Rahmani, you know, by that logic, tomorrow when murder happens and the accused happens to be a Muslim man, then he should not be tried as per IPC or CRPC. He should be stoned to death. That's what Sharia says. So, on the one hand, very conveniently for personal laws, you are saying, oh, when it comes to divorce of Muslim women, as per our personal laws, ex-husband can't and should not pay maintenance. You don't recognize the sanctity of a secular law like CRPC, which applies to all Indians. Whereas at the same time, when it comes to an act of murder, which will be tried under IPC, at least previously IPC section 302, why not apply Sharia there?
See, if you are asking me personally, I am very much in favor of applying every CRPC, IPC, Islamic CRPC, IPC applied on every Muslim person, whether it's a murder or it's a theft or it's a kidnapping or whatever it is. If the law of the land can prescribe a Muslim IPC and CRPC separately to the Muslims or any other community, I will welcome. I will be the first person to welcome.
What is a Muslim
it
IPC
like,
or CRPC?
Many other countries like Sharia.
What does that even mean?
If there is
if we are, as per law, Article 15 of the Constitution, equal before the law, what is even a Muslim IPC or Muslim CRPC? What are you even suggesting, sir?
This is exactly what Shazia Elmi and you are suggesting. It's not mine. It's
You just
yours.
said it. You just said it that I would be happy if there's a Muslim IPC and a Muslim CRPC.
Yes, it is different from the Indian Constitution. That's why I said it. In Indian Constitution, a murderer is not necessarily be hanged, but in Islam, it has to be hanged or the qasas has to be given.
Okay.
In a rape case, the Muslim man has to be sangsar. So that's what I mean. And that this is the same question which you and Shazia Elmi has raised over here. So I gave you my personal opinion that I am in favor of that kind of CRPC applied over to the Muslim man, like in Malaysia and other secular Muslim countries.
So why doesn't that same CRPC, which is secular to you and me and everybody on this panel, be applicable in the case of alimony of a Muslim woman?
I have to complete my submission.
Yeah.
So
as
in
far
a way
as the Sharia versus secularism is concerned, as far as the Sharia versus secularism you are leveling over here, secularism never means to deny a religious right, but it means to adopt every religion. That's what the Indian Constitution is all about. That's why the section 44 of the guiding principles says that a state cannot interfere in the personal laws of any
Mr.
religion.
Rahmani, I'm asking you a simple question. Do you support the Supreme Court ruling last week that Muslim women, just like Hindu women, Christian women, Sikh women, are entitled to maintenance under section 125 of the CRPC? Do you support or do you reject that? It's a simple question.
I am rather in favor of the Law Commission suggestion in 2020, where it suggests that every personal law must be codified. This is the problem of Muslim personal law, that they did not codify the personal law till date. This is the real discrepancy, and if the government of India
what would a codified Muslim personal law, sir,
why not
what would a codified Muslim personal law recommend for maintenance or alimony for a divorced Muslim woman?
See, I am not an Islamic scholar.
Okay.
I cannot comment on this question. Rather, what I mean, the codification of any law, then there must be settled clauses for every crime committed under that law. That is the meaning of the codified.
Let me ask Yasmin Farooqui. This is not the first case. This case that has come via the Supreme Court order last week. There is the Daniel Latifi case in 2001, where the court ruled that husband's payment of meher does not exempt him from paying maintenance under Section 125 CRPC if the couple were to get a divorce. In the Iqbal Bano case of 2007, the court pronounced that the pronouncement of triple talaq does not absolve the husband of maintenance responsibility. In the Shabano Bano case of 2010, triple talaq doesn't relieve the husband of obligation to pay maintenance. Now, last week's Supreme Court order is in keeping with all of these orders that have come from various courts of law. Why should the Muslim women of India who are divorced, who are entitled to alimony, not seek refuge under these various court judgments which are precedents?
आपको शायद पता नहीं ये बात क्यों बार बार डिनाई की जाती है कि 2001 से 2001 से आपको एलिमनी कोड दिलवा रहा है मुस्लिम महिला को, जो मुस्लिम खातून है उसको आफ्टर डिवोर्स 2001 से कोर्ट से, फैमिली कोर्ट से उसको हर्जा खर्चा भत्ता जो माना जाता है वो मिल रहा है। थोड़ा सा आप बार बार मुस्लिम पर्सनल लॉ बोर्ड की बात करते हो, शरे की बात करते हो, मैं थोड़ा सा इसको लंबा समझाने की कोशिश करूँगी। 2 मिनट का मुझे टाइम दीजिएगा। एक जवाब तो आपके पास मैं ये दे दूं कि ये बात ही अलग है। 2001 से बराबर मुस्लिम महिलाओं को मिल रहा है हर्जा खर्चा, वो मैं आप चाहेंगे तो फाइल्स मंगवा के फैमिली कोर्ट से देख लीजिए। अब आप बात आती है, देखिए शादी सब लोगों का तरीक़ा अलग अलग है। फेरे होते हैं हिंदू, उसमें क्रिश्चियनिटी में जाके आपके वहाँ पे उसके सामने बात हो जाती है और रजिस्टर मेंटेन हो जाता है। मुस्लिम लॉ, 1 मिनट, मेरी बात पूरी नहीं हुई, मैं किसी के बीच में नहीं बोलती, इसलिए आप कहेंगे मैं चुप हो जाऊंगी, लेकिन मेरी बात पूरी सुन लेंगे तो ज़्यादा बेहतर होगा। मुस्लिम लॉ में निकाह होता है और निकाह जो है वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मैरिज है, और कॉन्ट्रैक्ट का मतलब है कि आप बैठ के बात करिए और कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कीजिए कि आपको किन शराइत पे निकाह करना है, आपको मेंटेनेंस लेना है, आपको मेहर लेना है, आपको तलाक का हक औरत को देना है, आपके पास रखना है। ये सारा मुस्लिम मैरिज जो है वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है, वो जन्म जन्म का साथ नहीं है। तो आप पहले तो शादियों की बात कर लो, क्योंकि वो चीज़ ही अलग है। फिर
यास्मीन जी, मैंने अभी गिनाया, एक सेकंड के लिए सुनिए, मैंने जो 3 केसेस जो गिनाया अभी, जो वेरियस कोर्ट्स ऑफ लॉ, कई सारी अदालतों का जो फैसला है, उन्होंने साफ साफ कहा है कि मेहर देने के बावजूद ऐसा नहीं है कि मुस्लिम मैन कैन बी एग्जेम्प्ट फ्रॉम हिज रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ पेइंग मेंटेनेंस। मेहर देने के बावजूद उसको मेंटेनेंस भी देना पड़ेगा अगर इन द इवेंट ऑफ अ डिवोर्स। तो ये कोर्ट का मानना है, और एक कोर्ट का नहीं, 3-4 इंस्टेंस में दे रहा हूं आपको कि 125 CRPC एप्लीकेबल है मुस्लिम महिलाओं के ऊपर, मुस्लिम मर्दों के ऊपर।
अरे तो आप मेरी शायद बात को समझ नहीं रहे। 125 CRP, 125 CRP 2001 से मुस्लिम महिलाओं को पैसे मिल रहे हैं।
मैं आपको एक सेकंड, मैं आपको इस केस जो पिछले हफ्ते आया था, let me just, for your benefit, for our viewers' benefit also, this case which was ruled by the Supreme Court last week was the case of a husband-wife couple, a Muslim husband-wife couple in Telangana. The wife separated from the husband. She approached the lower court first, did not get justice, went to the high court. Finally, the matter came to the Supreme Court, where the Muslim husband's contention was that a divorced Muslim woman cannot invoke Section 125 as it is against Muslim personal law. The family court, while hearing the petition, directed the husband to pay interim maintenance of 20,000 per month to his divorced wife. Then the husband went to the Telangana High Court. The same argument. The Telangana High Court ordered the husband to pay 10,000 rupees as interim maintenance to his former wife. And finally, it went up to the Supreme Court, where the court, giving relief to this Muslim woman, has said that a Muslim woman can seek maintenance from husband under 125 CRPC. It also said that Muslim Women Act of 1986 will not prevail over this secular law, stressing that maintenance is not charity, but it's the right of all women. ये कोर्ट का मानना है। तो ये कहना कि 2001 से
नहीं
नहीं सब मुस्लिम महिलाओं को मेंटेनेंस मिल रहा है, ये गलत है। अगर मिल रहा है तो ये लेडी क्यों अप्रोच किया उन्होंने? शी वेंट टू फैमिली कोर्ट, शी वेंट टू तेलंगाना हाई कोर्ट एंड देन शी हैज कम टू सुप्रीम कोर्ट लास्ट वीक।
आप मेरा जवाब सुन लीजिए, मेरा जवाब सुन लीजिए। इसका मतलब यह है कि आप उनको 20,000 रुपया फैमिली कोर्ट से बंधा, वो आदमी गया है हाई कोर्ट उसके अगेंस्ट, लेकिन कोर्ट ने तो उसको बांध दिया था। वो एक अकेला आदमी, अगर 25,000 लोगों में एक अकेला आदमी हाई कोर्ट चला गया,
वही आपसे पूछ रहा हूँ कि अगर वो आदमी उसको चैलेंज करके सुप्रीम कोर्ट तक गया है और सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ये फैसला दिया है कि 125 एप्लीकेबल है, जितनी हिंदू महिलाओं के ऊपर एप्लीकेबल है उतनी ही मुस्लिम महिलाओं के ऊपर एप्लीकेबल है।
2001 से दे रहे,
तो फिर ऑल इंडिया मुस्लिम पर्सनल लॉ बोर्ड क्यों कह रही है यास्मीन फारूकी जी कि वो जाएंगे इस जजमेंट के खिलाफ, इस निर्णय के खिलाफ? क्यों कह रहे हैं वो?
मैंने आपको सारी बात बताई है कि जो रीजन है उनका, वो बेसिकली, पहली बात तो देखिए उनकी मर्जी है, ये संवैधानिक अधिकार है कि कौन कहाँ जा रहा है और किसको चैलेंज कर रहा है, उसके बीच में हमें क्यों ऐतराज है, पहली बात। और दूसरी बात यह है कि मेरा वही बात आप मेरी बात को समझिए कि मैरिज के जो शादी करने के तरीके हैं वो अलग अलग हैं। मैरिज कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है, आप बैठ के तय करिए ना कि आपको मेंटेनेंस लेना है, लिखवाइए।
शादी करने का तरीका
और उसके अच्छों को
ये सब चीजें मतलब काफी सारे हो सकते हैं, लेकिन कानून तो एक ही हो सकता है ना। कानून तो सबके लिए इक्वल है, कानून हैज टू बी एप्लीकेबल टू एवरीवन। या शाजिया, यू नो द फंडामेंटल पॉइंट इज
सम वेरी बेसिक थिंग्स।
कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में 5 चीजों के जो शरअ कानून है, जो
सो द 4-5 थिंग्स, वेरी शॉर्ट पॉइंट।
एक सेकंड यास्मीन जी, एक सेकंड
हो गया आपका। यास्मीन आप बहुत देर तक आप बोली और अपने बात को बहुत बार रिपीट किया। सो माय क्वेश्चन इज that if the courts are anyway giving it, this is exactly what we are saying, that the court should give it, that a woman has a right to go to court. Then why should All India Muslim Personal Law Board have an issue with this?
Yes,
I don't get that. And secondly, when she keeps talking about the contract which is signed between two people, which is a nikahnama between a man and a woman under Islam, is a two-way contract. If a man decides to unceremoniously, ignominiously throw out his wife, discard her, she doesn't have a choice in the matter. So it's very easy to say, oh, it's a contract, it's a mutual contract. No, a man just decides to abandon his wife, pronounces talaq or divorce, and she's left asking for alms, begging for alms. So contract is not as simple and as utopian as she makes it out to be. Yeah. Thirdly, and most importantly, when she talks about nikah, we all know how nikahs happen. Everybody knows the ceremonies are all different. But when Muslims follow all other laws, they should not have a problem with following this when it leads to gender parity. And also, if a man is capable of providing for a woman and she doesn't have any means, shouldn't he support his children? So if the contract is over, they become strangers. She has, after all, been his wife for several years. In Shah Bano's case, she was 62 years old.
Zakia Soman,
62 years old, and all she wanted was 122 rupees.
Yeah. Zakia Soman, the point is, whether it was the Child Marriage Restraint Act way back in the 1970s, the Shah Bano case, which we've all discussed, the 1985 ruling, even the most recent one, the banning of the instant triple talaq, there is a certain cohort of self-appointed custodians of Islam, mostly men, in this instance represented through the AIMPLB, who are dead opposed to anything that is seen as progressive towards improving the lot of Muslim women. Why is that?
Because it is about retaining their hegemony and dominance, which they enjoyed at one time in the 70s and the 80s. But the community has really moved on, and the personal law board has not, kept up pace with the community. I think it has become rather irrelevant. And again, when they are saying that they will challenge this order has come from the highest court of the land. Against this order, where will you go? And then it's very good, it's very laudable that Muslim marriage is a contract. But we spoke to 5,500 women, and we found that 60% of the women do not have a copy of their nikahnama. And the nikah namas, even when they exist, they are just bare minimum basic things. They just carry the name and of the bride and the groom and the address. There are no conditionalities there elaborately.
Can I
So
also
these
ask,
personal
Zakia,
law boards,
if for example, the conditions of the nikah nama are violated, who does the Muslim woman turn to? Does she not turn to the law, to the courts?
Some Muslim women in the triple talaq matter, lot of Muslim women approached the personal law board run Darul Qazas and they did not get justice there. That is how then they went to the Supreme Court. And there are a lot of cases of a lot of Muslim women lying across the country in various high courts, lower courts, and even in the Supreme Court. So these, first of all, these people are no judges. See, in Islam, there is no role for intermediaries the way, these guys have self-appointed themselves.
Yep.
So that is the basic truth. And then whenever
Absolutely.
women have approached them in the past, the personal law board and their affiliates have failed to, like, I have copies of so many instant triple
Talaq victims,
divorces validated by the personal law board people totally in a one-sided manner without as much as calling the woman or asking her
So,
viewpoint. even
Taslim
on phone.
Rahmani, if a Muslim woman who's been wronged by her husband turns to, as Zakia Soman said, the Darul Qazas appointed by the board and is not able to get justice there, then who does she turn to? She naturally turns to a court of law. As was this in this case that came to the Telangana High Court and finally to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court two-judge bench had to rule that they have as much right to maintenance under 125 CRPC as any other woman.
See, this is the beauty of our constitution, that every citizen has a right to approach to any level of the court for their grievances under the Constitution of India, like those articles which you are quoting, Article 15, 19, 21, etc. This is their choice. And at the same time, they also have the choice to abide by their personal laws. So, Constitution of India, Indian laws does not bar any person of the law.
When there is an injustice,
by whatever way,
what law prevails? If a Muslim woman has been wronged by her husband, she's not getting maintenance, then what law prevails? Does the personal law prevail or does the Indian secular law prevail?
Both laws can prevail in this country.
But they're saying two different things.
What the beauty of this constitution?
Mr. Rahmani, they're saying two different things.
That's why at the outset I said it. There are, you see, no, this is not. This is by your own eyes it can be ugly, but it cannot. I want to remind you.
Which is the provision of law that gives justice to the victim in question?
There is no problem. Let me complete. Let me complete. If you are asking me, there is no problem in the Sharia laws. There is a problem. There is a problem in the implementation of Sharia law. नहीं शाजिया जी आप मुझे इंटरवीन मत कीजिए, मैंने भी आपको नहीं किया था. मैं कर रहा हूँ कि
if there is a problem in the implementation, if there is a problem in the implementation, Taslim Rahmani Sahab,
and interpretation,
if there is a problem in the interpretation and the implementation, then who do Muslim women turn to? What do they turn to? Do they not have to turn to IPC and CRPC? To the law of the land?
This is the first duty of the state to codify the law of every personal law, every community. The personal laws must be codified of every law.
But you will not say that the woman should deserve it. Look at it, how brazenly you're saying you're denying the woman. You have no word to say.
This is the duty of the government to come out with the codified personal law.
Last time I checked, the people,
look at the pettiness of these men.
The people who are most opposed to any kind of codification of personal laws also happen to be Muslim men from the All India Muslim Personal Law Board. Zakia knows this, Shazia knows this. They were the ones who did not want codification of personal laws.
No, this is the fault of the All India Muslim Personal Law Board, that they did not codify the Muslim law. That is the real discrepancy
Okay.
with the
Who are they to codify?
Sharia
But who are they to
application.
codify?
Actually, this
Who
is the
gives them
problem.
the right to codify?
Let's
If Muslim
let's-
Personal Law Board,
let's-
if Personal Law Board is not doing that, the government must do it like the Hindu court bill, like the Sikh court bill, like the Christian court bill.
Let's move
Why don't
on.
the
I want to
Muslim
thank all
law
our
is
guests.
codified by
I
the
want to move
Jawaharlal
on to
Nehru
our
Mission.
second story. Thank you very much. We'll see how this story plays out. Like I said, the Personal Law Board has said that they will challenge the order of the Supreme Court before a bigger bench, a wider bench. Let's see how that story plays out. I want to move on to the other big focus, and this is a game-changing moment really in the US presidential election. It's been rocked by this assassination attempt on the Republican candidate, Donald Trump. He was addressing a rally in Pennsylvania in Butler, just off Pittsburgh, where a bullet just missed him by a whisker. It hit his right ear. He was seen bleeding and falling to the ground, and then getting up and raising his fist into the air, pumping the air, and urging his supporters to fight on. As Donald Trump surges now in the polls, striking a defiant note, he will also pick up his VP nominee at the Republican National Convention, which has begun in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin. He's also managed to get some legal relief in a second case, a classified documents case that's now been dismissed by a Florida judge. So where exactly is this election headed? As for the last 2 weeks, we've now been hearing clamor and pressure on Joe Biden to bow out of this race. And now his opposite number, the Republican candidate, has just missed a bullet, has just managed to save his life by the skin of his teeth. Does this fundamentally alter the nature of this race?
If you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
The assassination attempt against former US President Donald Trump is the single biggest news item ahead of a bitterly contested presidential election. And this murder bid, instead of trying to unite America at a moment of a terrible tragedy like this one, seems more likely to tear apart America even further. Within minutes of the shooting, the air was filled with anger, bitterness, suspicion, and an overwhelming feeling of revenge among Trump supporters. Fingers were pointed, conspiracy theories were put forth, and a country that was already deeply divided is even more fractured now. The shooting on Saturday night was just 2 days before Republicans were all set to gather in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for their once-in-4 years convention, which would put the stamp of approval on Donald Trump as the official nominee of the grand old party. Republicans, right after the shooting, have instantly blamed President Joe Biden and his allies for the attack on the former president. They argue that the level of political violence actually stemmed from the incendiary language labeling the former President Trump as a neo-fascist who's out to destroy democracy. They even point to some statements made by Biden allies saying that 2024 would be the last election if Trump were to come to office. Biden had even recently said that he wants to put Trump in the bull's eye, and his only strategy against Trump come November is to attack. Trump supporters say that is code for the Democrats and the Democrat voter base to take a shot at Trump. Either way, this incident could fuel Trump's narrative about being the victim of persecution by the Democrat-led establishment. Donald Trump was impeached, he was indicted, and convicted by a court of law, but now he can legitimately claim that the Democrats would go to any length to stop him from running for office, even put up someone to take a shot at him. After being wounded at the rally, Donald Trump, with a blood-stained face, pumped his fist at the crowd and he shouted what appeared to be the words, "Fight, fight, fight." The crowds in return chanted back, "USA, USA, USA." This could be the defining image of election 2024. The shooting came at a time when the United States was already deeply polarized along ideological, cultural, and partisan lines. It is split into almost two countries, even two realities, if you will. More than at any other time in modern political history, Americans today do not see themselves as a collective union of red states and blue states, but people who are at polar ideological opposites on what sort of country they want America to be. The divisions have grown so stark that a poll back in May found that 47% of Americans, that's almost a majority, considered that a second civil war is likely to happen in their lifetime. It is the stuff that would have only been confined to the imaginations of Hollywood movie makers, but it is very much now America's reality. Events lately have led many people to compare 2024 to 1968, which was a year of great turmoil in America. It was a year of racial riots. There were clashes in major cities across the country, and of course the assassinations of human rights activist Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy, who was at that time a presidential candidate. Protests over the Vietnam War back then had prompted the then President Lyndon Johnson to drop out of the race for his re-election. This year too, there have been growing calls on President Biden to step out of the race and make way for a younger candidate. But this assassination attempt on Donald Trump, his main challenger, will tamp down the pressure on Biden. No Democrat, particularly one who is in his 50s or 60s, who sees a future for themselves, will want to take on Trump now, particularly after the assassination attempt. There is going to be a surge in the polling on the back of both this murder bid against Trump and also the Republican National Convention, which will formally endorse him as the Republican candidate. Not since President Abraham Lincoln was shot dead by a Confederate sympathizer has an assassination attempt against a sitting president or a former president so sharply exacerbated America's political divide. Lincoln was not the only sitting president who was assassinated. Presidents James Garfield, William McKinley, and John F. Kennedy were also shot to death by lone gunmen. In those instances, those gunmen, those assassins, were upset with those presidents for some reason or the other. But those killings did not become outright clashes between Republicans and Democrats. The same was true with the assassinations of Dr. Martin Luther King and Robert F. Kennedy. The last time a US president was targeted in an assassination attempt was in 1981, when Ronald Reagan was attacked by a man when he was walking back to his car after a speech in Washington. But then the entire country rallied around the president, including Democrats. Reagan won the re-election in 1984, and by the end of his presidency, there was the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of communism in Eastern Europe. In fact, Reagan's presidency set the stage for the collapse of the USSR. In recent years, political violence in America has become increasingly partisan. Representative Gabrielle Giffords, Democrat of Arizona, was critically wounded in a mass shooting in 2011. Representative Steve Scalise of Louisiana, who's now the Republican majority leader, he was shot and injured during a congressional baseball game in 2017. The assassin happened to be a supporter of Senator Bernie Sanders. An armed man was arrested outside the home of Justice Brett Kavanaugh in 2022. The suspect told the authorities that he wanted to kill the conservative Supreme Court justice because of his positions against abortion and gun control. And later that year, a man wielding a hammer broke into the house of Nancy Pelosi, who was then the Democratic Speaker of the House, and beat her husband, Paul Pelosi. The most famous recent case of political violence was the attack on Capitol Hill on the 6th of January 2021 by supporters of Donald Trump. They were trying to block the certification of Joe Biden's 2020 election victory. The Capitol Police have investigated more than 8,000 cases related to the insurrection of January 6th. But these cases have not led to soul searching in America. It's not unified people across political divides. Instead, it has ended up in more political blame game. The assassination attempt on Donald Trump, I'm afraid, will likely have the same resultant effect, and that is the political divides in America and the blame game between Democrats and Republicans will only get further accentuated before it gets any better, if at all it will. All right, to try and assess the impact of what this might mean for the Republican Party, for Donald Trump. Of course, the Republican Party is now meeting at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee in Wisconsin. And joining us live from there is Ivan Rodriguez, CNN correspondent, who's covering the Republican National Convention. Thank you very much, Ivan, for speaking with us. What's been the political impact of the assassination attempt at President Donald Trump, former president, over the weekend, and now as the Republican National Convention opens there in Milwaukee, where you're reporting for us from? What kind of impact are you seeing? Are you seeing a sort of rallying around the candidate of the Republican Party in a way that this unfortunate incident has galvanized the whole party around the candidate?
Zaka, there's definitely been a big difference in the tone, specifically. If we look back to before the attempted assassination of the former president and after, now we definitely see more of a sense of unity, and that's sort of the messaging that we're getting from delegates here on the ground, and also potentially when it comes to former President Trump's speech later on this week at the end of the convention come Thursday, to really rallying cry, as you mentioned, bringing everybody together. And in his first interview, sitting down with the Washington Examiner, former President Trump really spoke about how it would be a lot different than his last speech, or his speech that he was already intending to give come this Thursday. And he said, quote, "This is a chance to bring the whole country, even the whole world, together." So again, that big theme that we're expecting really revolves around unity.
I do want to ask you, coming into this convention, particularly in the last few months, the attention of Donald Trump's campaign was away from the campaign trail itself, was more on his legal troubles. You had a whole bunch of the court issues were there, the convictions, the indictments, so on and so forth. Has this incident and the manner in which it is played out, and now coming into the National Convention, has it taken attention away from all of those legal troubles and now squarely focused on the candidate?
I think it comes sort of in two parts, right? Because if we even go back to the debate where both of these candidates, Biden and Trump, met on stage, even at that point, I think it's fair to say that a lot of that attention was almost now transitioned over to President Biden, and calls from Democratic lawmakers, some of them, for him to drop out, some donors as well. So I think it's been almost a movement now for the last couple of weeks in terms of that attention turning away from former President Trump. And now, after the attempted assassination, we really have seen on both sides of the aisle, politicians, world leaders come out and condemn this attack and really go against what is political violence. We heard last night as well, President Biden addressed the nation from the Oval Office. He also called for a cooling temperature when it comes to politics in general, really warning Americans to continue to go down this road as well.
Ivan, I was just going to ask you that about the effect that this assassination attempt has had on the opposite side, on the Democratic side. And as you said, for about a good 2 weeks now, we were hearing growing and multiple voices asking President Biden to step aside and make way perhaps for a younger candidate. Do you reckon that because of what happened on Saturday, those calls might be tempered down a bit for Joe Biden to exit the race?
It definitely is a possibility. We've heard from Democrats sort of begin to rumblings of pulling behind Biden as well. We see a lot of that unification around the GOP, the Republican Party, and now possibly the same effect could be happening in terms of the Democratic Party. We know that just in the campaign sense on its own, the Biden campaign has temporarily pulled those TV ads, those commercial spots that they've had. They've rescheduled trips that were supposed to take place come Monday. We know another important interview will be coming out today as well with Lester Holt on NBC. So there's still a lot of movement there from the Biden camp, but I think both candidates right now are really going to have to reshape how they see the final stretch of this of their campaigns going leading up to that general election in November.
Many Republicans have said this publicly in the aftermath of the assassination attempt, that it was the heightened rhetoric, the polarized rhetoric coming in from the Democrats, from Mr. Biden and his allies, that created the environment which led to the attack. What is likely to be the broad theme that Mr. Trump will touch upon in his final speech, the acceptance speech at the Republican National Convention? You referenced an earlier answer where he said in one of the first interviews that he's given after the attack, he has said that this could be a moment to unite the whole country, perhaps even the world?
Right, and even reports coming out of that Trump camp that he even tore up the speech that he was originally planning on giving, and then shifting that focus now on unity. And we know that every day here there's going to be a different theme for the convention itself, whether it's Make America Wealthy Again, playing off the slogan of Make America Great Again, or Make America Safer Again, playing off other topics. But I think we're going to see, as this convention gets started today, that unity message really come through, not only from the top, which is probably the most important that it could come from in terms of the GOP, the former president, but also from a ground level and all the delegates that are attending here as well.
Just curious to know, I mean, Trump and unity don't exactly go hand in hand. I mean, he's not exactly known as a unifying candidate. He's quite the opposite. He's quite a polarizing, a divisive candidate. Can he make that change? Because, as you said, in what he said in the first interview, that this could be a moment that could unite the whole country and unite perhaps the world. Can he make that transition from being a divisive candidate to perhaps a unifying one?
I think that's the key question, right, leading into November. And even after the debate, we were really discussing, where do these independent voters go, right? Because I think at this point, everybody who already wants to support former President Trump, their mind isn't going to be changing. Same with President Biden. But for everybody else who maybe still hasn't made up their mind and might be very crucial when it comes to swing states, will those voters be able to be swayed by maybe a change in messaging, maybe a change in tone from the former president after that? You hear from historians about the impact that the shooting had on Ronald Reagan himself, maybe even having an epiphany at that point in his presidency. Will we see that now from former President Trump? I think that, Zach, is the most important question now leading in again to that final stretch here.
I think somewhere in one of the interviews I was reading that Trump told his close aides that he feels that God was who protected him from this attack, and this is almost like a second chance. Thank you very much, Ivan Rodriguez, for joining us live from the venue of the Republican National Convention there in Milwaukee in Wisconsin, where, of course, Donald Trump will be making an appearance. He will, at the end of this 4-day convention, accept officially the nomination to be the Republican Party's candidate for the presidential election in November. So Fareed Zakaria of CNN on his show GPS spoke with Ian Brummer of the Eurasia Group and also to Tim Naftali, who's a presidential historian, and asked them what kind of impact this is going to have, the Trump assassination attempt, on both the Republican Party's candidate as well as on the Democratic Party's candidate, given that we've seen rising calls from within the Democratic Party asking Biden to step aside for perhaps a younger candidate. Will those now be tempered down? Will the president itself eventually become the Democratic Party's nominee, and will the Democratic Party rally around him? And the most important question, and that is whether this will give the sympathy factor to Donald Trump in a way that it surges him ahead in the polls, perhaps even giving him an unassailable lead. This is what Ian Bremmer and Tim Naftali had to tell Fareed Zakaria.
Ian, Republican convention, the next big thing coming up. What do you think happens there, and who does Trump pick as his vice president? Does this change anything?
It changes a lot in the sense that Donald Trump is going to appear in Milwaukee like Lazarus, right? I mean, this has already been a cult of Trump individually. He has such strong charisma with the MAGA faithful that is going to get far stronger on the back of this. And if he is changing his mind or rethinking it all, and Lord knows I don't have any intelligence on that, I would say he's more likely to pick someone who is really aligned with that message. The single person I've seen that has most strongly resonated with that since the assassination attempt would be J.D. Vance.
And what does it mean for Biden and that talk about him stepping down?
I think the Democrats are going to rally around the president. I think we're going to hear much less about him stepping down. I think Democrats are going to see this as a moment when more discord is unpleasant and unnecessary. And I also think they understand that the political challenge they face is enormous, and they need to face it as a united party. They want the White House and they want the House.
But as I said, when we look there are few clues here, but Trump probably benefits from this.
Well, I'm quite certain Trump. Yeah. I mean, he didn't benefit as a human being, but as a political figure, he's a juggernaut now. I think there will be a lot of people who will see in his reaction to yesterday's assassination attempt a strength that they admire and they want to rally to.
When you talked about this, when we started about the world, how do you think the world is looking at all this? Because I'm always struck by, you know, when I talk to people around the world, they always say the U.S. economy is doing amazingly. Your technology companies rule the world. The dollar is the supreme currency, but your political system seems so screwed up, and you seem so paralyzed and polarized.
Small point and a big point. Small point is that this election had been Biden's to lose, and he looked likely to. It is now Trump's to win. And I think that countries around the world now recognize that Trump is the likely next president. Most American allies are deeply discomfited about that, and they're preparing for it. Most American adversaries see great opportunity in that. But there's a bigger point. And the bigger point is that the United States no longer has a political system that any country around the world admires. They admire the dollar. They admire the U.S. economy. They admire U.S. innovation and entrepreneurship. No one admires America's political system. That is a deep concern, a generational concern for leaders around the world that rely on the United States, where the global order requires a strong and stable U.S. Even the Chinese don't want the Americans falling apart. They need the political system to be stable in the Middle East and Russia, Ukraine, and all of that. This is a very, very worrying time for all the leaders that you and I talk to.
So it's almost like Donald Trump has got a second wind, he's got a second shot at life, and clearly he's now just a shoe-in away from a second term as president, something that is watched by history gazers in America. If you're a one-term president, the legacy that you leave behind is different, and that's something that Trump had in the back of his mind when he announced to run. Now, after this attempted assassination, it seems like he's just a whisker away from returning to the Oval Office. That's a wrap. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is Brass Tacks. We're coming to you live from the CNN News 18 and Federal Bank Primetime Studio. We'll be on top of the Trump story and all other developments, both from America and around the rest of the world, tomorrow night at 9 p.m. for another edition. Good night.
And for an America, not of extremism and fury, but of decency and grace. I'll continue to speak out strongly for our democracy, stand up for our Constitution and the rule of law, to call for action at the ballot box, no violence on our streets. That's how democracy should work. We debate and disagree. We compare and contrast the character of the candidates, the records, the issues, the agenda, the vision for America. But in America, we resolve our differences at the battle box. So tonight, I'm asking every American to recommit, to think about it. What's made America so special? Here in America, everyone must be treated with dignity and respect, and hate must have no safe harbor. Here in America, we need to get out of our silos, where we only listen to those with whom we agree, where misinformation is rampant, where foreign actors fan the flames of our division to shape the outcomes consistent with their interests, not ours. Let's remember, here in America, while unity is the most elusive of all goals right now, nothing is more important for us now than standing together. We can do this. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Good afternoon. Last night, I spoke with Donald Trump. I'm sincerely grateful that he's doing well and recovering, and we had a short but good conversation. Jill and I are keeping him and his family in our prayers. We also extend our deepest condolences to the family of the victim who was killed. He was a father. He was protecting his family from the bullets that were being fired, and he lost his life. God love him. We're also praying for the full recovery of those who were injured And we're grateful to the Secret Service agents and other law enforcement agencies and individuals who risk their lives literally for our nation. As I said last night, there is no place in America for this kind of violence or any violence for that matter. An assassination attempt is contrary to everything we stand for as a nation, everything. It's not who we are as a nation. It's not America. And we cannot allow this to happen. Unity is the most elusive goal of all, but nothing is important than that right now, unity. We'll debate and we'll disagree. That's not going to change, but we're going to not lose sight of the fact who we are as Americans. Look, Vice President Harris and I were just briefed in the Situation Room by my Homeland Security team, including the Director of the FBI, the Secretary of Homeland Security, the Attorney General, the Director of the Secret Service, my Homeland Security Advisor, the National Security Advisor, and we're going to continue to be briefed. The FBI is leading.
Climate change is on our doorstep. It's time for a revolution to take root. And it starts with 1.4 billion Indians. It starts with one tree for humanity, one tree for Mother Earth, one tree for our future. Project One Tree, a News 18 network initiative.
Which is still in its early stages. We don't yet have any information about the motive of the shooter. We know who he is. I urge everyone, please, don't make assumptions about his motives or his affiliations. Let the FBI do their job and their partner agencies do their job. I'm instructed that this investigation be thorough and swift, and the investigators will have every resource they need to get this done. Look, as this investigation continues, here's what we're going to do. First, Mr. Trump, as a former president and nominee of the Republican Party, already receives a heightened level of security. And I've been consistent in my direction to the Secret Service to provide him with every resource, capability, and protective measure necessary to ensure his continued safety. Second, I've directed the head of the Secret Service to review all security measures for the Republican National Convention, which is scheduled to start tomorrow. And third, I've directed an independent review of the national security at yesterday's rally to assess exactly what happened. And we'll share the results of that independent review with the American people as well. And finally, I'll be speaking more about this tonight at greater length from the Oval Office. We must unite as one nation. We must unite as one nation to demonstrate who we are. And so may God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, when you spoke to President Trump yesterday, what did you tell him and what did he tell you, sir?
Mr. President, shifting our campaign strategy, Mr. President, do you regret?
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Tonight, we start with the biggest story of the hour, the Trump assassination attempt. This weekend, the former US president was attending a rally. That's when he was shot at. How did it all happen? Who was the shooter? And why did he do it? We will look at all of this.